Hi, I'm Jayne from Poppy Patchwork and welcome to my sewing room. So in today's video I'm going to show you progress on one of my WIPs. So the WIP in question is this table runner, my Christmas weave table runner. This Christmas weave table runner is made from half rectangle triangles, and in a recent video I showed you how to make this block. And what I'm working on now is the quilting for it. So you can see here I've chosen a kind of gold thread and I'm just doing straight line quilting, echoing the line of the block. And then on the background fabric I'm using a cream thread and I'm just doing, in the centre I'm doing straight lines, and then down the edges and on the border again I'm echoing the shape of the blocks. So I've done probably 2/3 of the quilting and I've still got this side of the quilt to do. So that's what I'm going to work on today. Now I do have this pattern available for you to buy on my website, and if you want to have a look at how to make this block, then right click on the link above and it will take you to my video on this. But in today's video I'm going to be working on the quilting of this table runner. So today I'm going to be using my Bernina B770 Quilters Edition sewing machine, and I'm going to be quilting the background fabrics, so I'm using this cream thread. Because I want to pop the knot, I have threaded and pulled out a length of thread so that I can then pull that through to the back and pop the knot, and I'll demonstrate that later. So I'm going to start sewing. So I'm just lining the edge of the presser foot along the seam and I'm following it. When I get to the seam here I'm going to stop and pivot. So leaving my sewing needle down, I'm just going to lift the presser foot and then turn the piece around, lower the presser foot again, making sure that it's lined up with the seam, and then continue sewing. So that first bit of quilting was quite simple because I could do it all in one go. As we come to do the next bit of quilting, I'm going to be stopping every time I hit these corner squares because I don't want to quilt over the top of them. If I show you on the other side, I've not quilted on top of these. I will be quilting on these, but I'm going to do it in that gold thread. So this bit is where I'm really going to be popping the knot. So I'm going to leave the threads long when I start, and I'm going to stop every time I hit a coloured square. I'm going to leave the threads long and then I'm going to pop the knot. So I'm going to line the presser foot up with the stitching that I just did. So I'm coming close to where I'm going to hit this coloured square. So I've now hit the coloured square, and I can stop sewing now, pull the threads nice and long, cut them and pop the knot, or because it's just a tiny little bit, I think I'm just going to sew around the tip of this square. So I'm going to raise the presser foot, then I'm going to lower it, and now essentially I am stitching in the ditch. Now I have to make a judgment call now as to where I stop stitching so that I'm going to be the right distance when I pivot again. So we didn't come very far, so I'm just going to go down a couple of stitches. So I'm going to now see if that's enough. I'm following this line of stitching. It looks pretty good, so I'm just going to keep on going. Now I'm going to stop at this seam here. I'm going to pivot again. And I'm going to follow that stitching until I hit this red piece here. So that was really close to the edge, so I'm just going to keep on going. So I've run out of thread on my bobbin, so conveniently it's just here where I can stop. So I'm going to raise the presser foot and raise the needle, and now I'm going to pull out the thread. Unfortunately there wasn't a lot on the bottom thread, but I might have enough to pop the knot later. Let me just have a look. So I'm going to flip that over, and this is the bottom thread here. I don't know if you can see that. Look, that's the bottom thread there. So there is going to be enough for me to pop the knot at this point. So now I'm going to fill my bobbin thread. So I'm coming up to this square here. I'm going to stop here where I've hit it basically. I'm now going to raise the presser foot, and I'm going to raise the needle, and I'm going to pull it out so that I've got some excess threads on either side of where I cut. And then I'm going to line up. In here there's nothing that needs to be sewn, so I'm going to line it up on my next square. So I'm going to position the presser foot, I'm going to lower the needle, and then I'm going to start sewing again. And I'm going to do that all the way down the length of the table runner. And when I've got to the end, I'm going to stop and I'm going to pop all the knots. So now I have got quite a few knots to pop or to bury on the back of my quilt. So I'm going to use the self-threading needle or an easy thread needle, and I'm going to work on the back of the quilt. So I'm going to pull this thread here just so that I can see the loop of the top thread, and then I'm going to pull that top thread through to the back. So now I've got 2 threads here. I'm going to wrap them around my finger to tie a knot. I'm going to position that knot quite close to the stitching here. And then I'm going to thread both those threads onto the needle. And then I'm going to push the needle in where the stitching is. I'm not going to push it all the way through, I'm just going to run it in between the wadding and the fabric on the back, and then I'm going to push it out. Now you need to make sure that you've pushed it out far enough so that the knot is going to end up somewhere in between your wadding and your fabric piece, or your backing fabric. So if I'm very quiet and as I pull this through, you might hear the knot pop as it goes through the fabric. That wasn't very noisy that time. So now I'm going to cut the threads close to the backing fabric, and there you can't see any threads. Now if I flip that over to the front, again it's very beautiful and neat, and you can't see any of the knot at all. So I'm going to continue that with the next one. So again, just going to pull that back thread just so that the loop comes through, and then I'm going to pull the top thread through to the back. I'm then going to tie a knot, and I'm going to position it quite close to those stitching, and then going to thread my needle, and I'm going to push it in near the stitching so that the knot can be buried between the wadding and the backing fabric. I'm going to pull that through. The knot has gone through, can't be seen, and the ends are tied off nice and neatly. So I'm going to continue to do that with all of the ends all the way down the table runner. So I've done the quilting, echoing the angles here, and the very last bit I need to do before I start on these squares are these little triangles here. So these are going to follow this line of stitching and then this line of stitching. So what I need to do is mark it with, I'm going to mark it with a ruler and a hero marker. So I'm going to line the ruler up with the stitching along here, and then mark with the hero marker a little crease here, and then I'm going to repeat on the other side, so lining the ruler up with the stitching running along here, and I'm going to find that point there and mark point here, and then I'm going to do that for the next one. Now these are about 1/2 inch apart. These lines of stitching are about 1/2 inch apart. So I want to get the right angle when I'm marking it with the hero pen, the hero marker. So I'm kind of lining 1/2 inch on that crease and finding the angle of the stitching. It's not always perfect, but it will be good enough. So it's really difficult to see, but I've marked with this hero marker the lines that I want to quilt on. So I'm going to do that all along the edge of this quilt. So the final bit of quilting that I'm going to be doing on this is in these squares here, and I've decided to do a square outline and then a diamond outline following the square of the block and the angles of the corner square piece in the block here. So when I finish all the quilting, I'm going to cut this excess off and then trim the table runner down. And the final thing I need to do is add the binding to my table runner. I do have a video about this, and if you right mouse click and the link above, it will take you to my video on how to add binding. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. Please click like and subscribe, and do add your comments because I love reading those. And if you want to support me a little bit more, then please pop over to my website and maybe buy one of my PDF patterns, or you can buy my new book, which is available on Amazon. Bye for now and happy quilting!